how people face the fear of death, the pain of death, how people by and large face the concept of death.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome from someone like you, ARG.
He is known as the father of palliative care in India. How to make life exciting before that moment of death comes, how to take care of our health.
Palliative care is not only about the dying. Palliative care is more about the living than the dying.
Death is a reality. Nobody in this world can escape physical death. A butterfly may live for 14 days, a dog may live for 10 years, a human being's lifespan may be 100 years, but his expectancy 70, 80, 60, depending on the country he lives in. People are not only facing the physical pain that you spoke about.
It is indeed a huge privilege to meet you at least virtually and to be able to talk to you. We know that ordinary mortals cannot transcend pain. I had seen one person with a cancer in the tongue who said what he felt was like nails being driven into his ear.
But doctor, what is your experience about people who are facing death? Is the pain primarily physical, or is there fear of death? Is there fear of the unknown beyond death?
There must be sages who can transcend that pain, separate the body from the soul. Ramana Maharshi underwent an appendectomy, and the surgeon offered anesthesia. Ramana Maharshi refused it. During the surgery, the surgeon asked Ramana Maharshi, "Don't you have pain?" And Maharshi responded, "Odambakirikku, enakkenna. My body has pain. What does it matter to me?"
Even saints, we talked about Ramana Maharshi. I'd like to touch that topic. How spirituality can help you overcome the pain. There is a way. Ramana Maharshi used two words, doctor. He used the word Nanayar. So the two words means, who am I? Why did somebody like Ramana Maharshi be unafraid of death? Because he realizes that he never dies.
There was a man who came and cursing God. God, what God? There is no God. This same man, after 2 days, held the hand of one of our nurses and said, "Daughter, I thought there was no God. There is a God. He sent you to me as his angel." What that nurse did was to make God visible to the man.
Yes.
You run a huge temple, the temple of temple where you make God visible by caring for people abandoned on the streets.
If you ask anybody, will you die? So what is the answer, common answer we get?
RD, I asked this question even to audience of doctors. Roughly only about one third of people are able to contemplate the possibility of their own death.
1% of people understand that they will never die. They are the immortal soul. But Buddha, the enlightened one, you must have heard, he said some word very beautifully. He said this samsara, this world is dukkha, which means that, doctor, every human being, you or me, ultimately some part of our body will suffer. Very often people struggle to understand the meaning of soul, S-O-U-L. So I have given them an acronym, Spark of Unique Life, S-O-U-L. I don't see Dr. Rajagopal in front of me. I see God in front of me. I see a Deva, I see a Devata in front of me. And if only we realize that every human being is a manifestation of God, then we don't have to search for God, doctor. We have to see God in every being. Then we will serve. We will serve everybody as God. We will see everybody as God. And we will love everybody as God. Greetings, my dear friends. Today I am happy to welcome Dr. M R Rajagopal, who doesn't need any introduction. But because of my respect for Doctor, he is known as the father of palliative care in India. He has been nominated twice for the Nobel Peace Prize, and he deserves it very much because he has been a person who has transformed the way the palliative care, the healthcare in India has been dealt with. That's why he has been distinguished with the Padma Shri Award for his services in healthcare in India. And he is known to one and all for his lovely talks. And today I think it is a privilege for us to have Doctor on this Zoom interaction session. And if I start talking of all doctors' achievements, then the whole call will become only on his achievements. So I should not, he is well respected in the medical field, in the service field, and amongst the intellectuals of our country. And today we are going to, as I welcome Dr. Rajagopal, I would like to ask him about how people face the fear of death, the pain of death, how people by and large face the concept of death. This is our conversation, but we will of course cover life. We are not only going to be talking on a mundane subject. How to make life exciting before that moment of death comes, how to take care of our health. So Doctor, a few introductory words from you as I welcome you. It's a pleasure to have you on this call, Doctor.
Thank you for the warm welcome from someone like you, AiR. It is indeed a huge privilege to meet you at least virtually and to be able to talk to you. Before we start, may I say that generally when Americans say something, it becomes fact. So yes, New York Times article did call me the father of palliative care in India, but let me clarify that an onco-surgeon who lives in Mumbai, Dr. Lucito D'Souza, created the first palliative care center in India, in Mumbai, Shanti Avedna Southern. So I'm standing on the shoulders of that giant and remembering him, I'll start answering your question. AiR, you asked me about making life exciting, possibly near the end of life. Again, let me make one clarification. Palliative care is not only about the dying. Palliative care is more about the living than the dying. Those living with a serious health issue. In one sentence, palliative care is mitigation of serious health-related suffering and improving quality of life. And of course, death, I have heard you speak in your videos, is the inevitable consequence of life. That also, quality of death also, as good as possible. That's palliative care. So primarily, mitigation of serious health-related suffering and improving quality of life, whether that be for 1 hour or for a whole lifetime. Now, having said that, you specifically asked about the time near the end of life. That's the natural culmination of life. So, a few things that I would want to say. One, can you all imagine an iceberg? We all learned in our middle school that only 1/10 of an iceberg is visible above the surface. So that visible part of the iceberg of suffering that we see is usually the physical suffering. Pain, commonest. Breathlessness, nasty, ulcerating, fungating wounds with maggots creeping around them. You run a huge temple, the temple of temple where you make God visible by caring for people abandoned on the streets. Several of those people who have come in might have come in with maggots over wounds. Yeah. So taking care of the physical suffering comes first in our work. Because we know that ordinary mortals cannot transcend pain. I've seen one person with a cancer in the tongue who said what he felt was like nails being driven into his ear, one after the another. And it goes on happening for 10 minutes. Then it stops. Now, I cannot imagine that nail coming in even once into my ear. That's unbelievable torture. I cannot imagine that. No, there must be sages who can transcend that pain, separate the body from the soul. And like Ramana Maharshi underwent an appendectomy once, and the surgeon offered anesthesia. Ramana Maharshi refused it. During the surgery, the surgeon asked Ramana Maharshi, "Don't you have pain?" And Maharshi responded, "உடம்புக்கு இருக்கு, எனக்கு என்ன?" My body has pain. What does it matter to me? But then, towards his end of life, Ramana Maharshi got cancer. And repeatedly it had to be operated. It was operated on thrice. Then it came back. And towards the end of his life, with this pain, he was still seeing visitors and engaging with them. That's the way he transcended pain. But then there was a limit. When that pain keeps on happening, at night, Ramana Maharshi could be heard groaning and crying in pain by himself. That transcendence perhaps is possible, but in my 30 years in palliative care, I have looked after very religious gurus in all three common religions in our country. I have yet to see the one person who has overcome pain or breathlessness. So that may be possible, but an ordinary mortal like me will find it difficult. But my point is, most of that pain, most of that breathlessness is needless. It can be treated. It can be treated by, you don't need high-tech things. Nowadays in medicine, unless you give anything with expensive machines, it's not popular. Simple, inexpensive medicines. But along with that, ARG, along with that, maybe a touch on the arm, a look with compassion that conveys to you, I see you are suffering. And that says, I am here. I will do my best for you. Or you can vocalize it. I see you are in a lot of pain. My colleagues and I are going to try our best to relieve that pain. And we will be here walking with you on that journey. And that message may not be in so many words conveyed. It's vitally important. Now, you ask generally about spiritual care. When that love is involved in the care process, that is spiritual support. The person who asks, why did God desert me? Sorry, I won't take long, but let me tell you one more real life story. There was a man who came in cursing God. God, what God? There is no God. No God would make me make me go through punishment like this. I never harmed anybody. I have lived a good life. I have been kind to others. And he makes me go through this. There is no God. This same man, after 2 days, held the hand of one of our nurses and said, okay, Malayalam, I'll translate in English. Daughter, I thought there was no God. There is a God. He sent you to me as his angel. What that nurse did was to make God visible to the man.
Beautiful.
And instrument, the instrument of love. But that love went along with the medicines to relieve the person's suffering and whatever physical ministrations were necessary.
Very good. Doctor, you have given such a fantastic introduction to this whole conversation. You've given it a beautiful perspective. Let us try now, Doctor. And you brought in spirituality, you brought in how to face pain. Let us help people who are listening to us today. Death is a reality. Nobody in this world can escape physical death, which means that we say God has created life in such a manner. You know, a butterfly may live for 14 days, a dog may live for 10 years, a human being's lifespan may be 100 years, but his expectancy 70, 80, 60, depending on the country he lives in. So, Doctor, the challenge that we face is people are not only facing the physical pain that you spoke about. Even saints, we talked about Ramana Maharshi, I'd like to touch that topic, how spirituality can help you overcome the pain. There is a way, but people have not learned the way, Doctor. The problem is people are facing pain because they think that it is inevitable. They think that pain is a necessary evil of life. But like you said, even when you have compassion, love, care, that helps. But Doctor, the pain that people have when they are in a hospice, like when we see people, we in our charitable home where we have 800 people who live in our charitable home, we pick people not with few maggots, but with hundreds, sometimes thousands of maggots on their open limbs and open arms. And we know they have lost the sensitivity of pain. Forget about feeling pain. There is no pain anymore. Because I think the entire transmission of pain to the brain has been like a leper. They say a leper in leprosy, the leper doesn't feel the pain because he becomes immune to it, or that portion doesn't. But Doctor, what is your experience about people who are facing death? Is the pain primarily physical, or is there fear of death? Is there fear of the unknown beyond death? Is there fear of the known, their property or their children or their relationships? What is your experience about the pain people face when death is about to appear?
AiR, what we believe is we meet the person where he or she is. And we walk with them on their journey, on their terms, holding that hand as well as possible. There's a man unable even to move because of the pain. We ask them sometimes to score their pain. 0 meaning no pain, 10 is the worst imaginable pain. And this man said it's 10. He also had several other problems. Like any food that he consumed would be regurgitated with smell of feces. Obviously, within his belly, the intestines had broken. And intestinal contents were coming out through the mouth. So this was absolute loss of dignity and absolute pain. I sat down beside him and asked him, what is bothering you most? It was obvious, of course, wasn't it? There was the pain, there was this. And he was silent for a while. We respect the silence. That silence is the time when they are organizing their emotions. Maybe trying to overcome the pain to concentrate on my question. And after a minute or two, he said, the one thing that I wanted was that my children should not be fishermen. This man was a fisherman. Now they are going to be just that. In the middle of the agony of the pain, the regurgitation of fecal matter through his mouth, the loss of dignity, the knowledge that he was going to die soon. He still was concerned most about his children not having the future that he would have liked them to have. I wouldn't lecture him about how every profession is noble, how the fisherman is feeding others and nobility. No. I am there not to preach to him, but to walk with him on the journey. We have a program for support of education for the children of families ravaged by disease. From the public, like AiR is run on public money. Here, this is also run by public money. So we made arrangements for that and asked him and told him, the arrangements are in place. Your children will study what they want to. Once our educational program, support program starts, it goes on till they complete their education. This is being done. The man's pain, which was not responding to my medicines at that time, came down to 1 out of 10.
Wow. Amazing.
And officially, pain is defined as a sensory and emotional experience, the connection of the mind and body. So here, our spiritual support was in caring for the person from the heart. Not only the treatment with the brain, from the heart also. The combination of compassion and competence. And then achieving what was most important for that person. Now, our spiritual support did not include taking him away. Our support to him did not taking him away to an institute where he would have better room, better food, etc. Because we believe another part of a person's spiritual makeup is what connects them to this world. For a lot of people, the connection is through God or religion. But not for everybody. I have known some agnostics who I believe are intensely spiritual people with their compassion. They may not believe in the conventional concept of God. That doesn't bother me. I see their intrinsic goodness. And apart from making their life meaningful, one thing that we try to do is to find out what connects them to this universe. I have a colleague, a fellow trustee of Palliative India. Her name is Ashla. She is paralyzed from here. She cannot use her fingers, so she types with her knuckles like this. And for her, the trees that she sees outside her window was a big part of her world. It was only about once a month that she would go to the institute on her wheelchair. And this was part of her universe, big part. And recently, when the neighboring property was, all the trees were cut down to make room for an automobile showroom, she lost her world, a good part of her world. Now, these things happen. What I would try, except for, in addition to giving him or her loving care, would also try to find out what is most meaningful for the person, like the children's education for the fisherman, or what connects the person to the universe, including the environment. Vast majority of our people want to be in their own homes. You ask, where would you like to die in? People who are able to accept the dying process, towards the end of your life, where would you like to be? Majority of people will say, I want to be alone. They want to be in their bed. and we try to make it happen as much as possible. Not always. Some days people are uprooted from their homes. The elderly who have no one to look after, like they have to come to your home.
Yes, because they are discarded on the street, and then how do they face? But doctor, yeah, what we must combine, doctor, with the beautiful palliative care that you take and the kind of support you give. People have not realized certain things, which when you talk about Ramana Maharshi used two words, doctor. He used the word Nan-yar. I don't know if you're familiar to these two words. So the two words means, who am I? Why did somebody like Ramana Maharshi be unafraid of death? Because he realizes that he never dies. He realizes that the body will die. And the people who are spiritual people are able to face, for example, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa also, Vivekananda's guru, he had cancer. Many of these spiritual leaders, cancer is not so uncommon. You know that today cancer is not, earlier cancer was very uncommon. But now, people as we age, we face it, there are so many treatments. But when the spiritual person gets cancer, he realizes, I don't have cancer. My body has cancer. Therefore, he separates himself from the body. So, doctor, just I'm asking you I'm asking you a very common question. If you ask anybody, will you die? So what is the answer, common answer we get?
AiR, I asked this question even to audience of doctors. Roughly only about one third of people are able to contemplate the possibility of their own death. The others refuse to think about it. They are running away. This is general conception of society.
But doctor, 1% of people, out of that 1/3 of people who understand of death, 1% of people understand that they will never die. They are the immortal soul. Today, when you see so many people who eventually reach death. What do, doctor? We take, when our father or our mother or somebody dies, we cremate the body. We cremate the body or we bury the body. If our father or mother was alive in bed, would we dare cremate the body? How could you think? How could you even think of cremating a person who is alive, right? But what we don't pay attention, doctor, is that we leave the body. The body gets diseased. The body experiences decay. But Ramana Maharshi and other Swamis are able to face the pain because of what is the realization that we are not this body. Even you spoke so beautifully about how the fisherman's thoughts were on his children. And how, doctor, what is the reason the pain level came from 10 to 1? Actually, pain, you should teach me this, doctor. Pain is very much to do with thought. Don't you agree that pain has a lot to do with a thought? And people don't understand what is a thought. I was giving a talk on the subject, what is a thought, doctor? And I just asked Google, what is a thought? And Google says a thought is part of the thinking process. So we say thought is part of the thinking process. It doesn't give us. So I try to tell people, thought is an impulse. Thought is an impulse. That is an expression of an emotional impression in our consciousness. So if you have got an impression of pain, if the impression of pain or the impression of my children becoming fishermen, or the impression of the fecal matter coming in your mouth, these are all impressions in our consciousness. Now these become expressions which appear as an impulse. And these impulses, as a doctor, you know, are electrical impulses. Their thoughts are actually electrical impulses. And they cause the misery, doctor. Don't you agree? These cause more misery than the physical pain. What is your feeling about this, doctor?
No, absolutely. I mean, earlier, I mentioned the official definition of pain as sensory and emotional experience. Thought. And grief. Grief is not necessary after a loss. You contemplate the loss and you get anticipatory grief. Oh my God, am I going to die? And then how will my children eat? These thoughts are giving suffering, absolutely. And for people like you who are able to overcome those very material thoughts which bother people like me, I have enormous, enormous admiration. And if you help a lot of people to reach that state of mind, that's so divine thing to do.
But
I am also saying that people who do not actually arrive at that or achieve that state of mind, common people, still sometimes maybe very spiritual people in another sense. I remember a 55-year-old man to whom I had to convey the bad news that he had incurable cancer. And this man smiles at me and says, it was in Malayalam, but I'll translate. You don't worry, doctor. Everybody has to die someday. Maybe my time has come. After all, I'm around 55. It's okay, doctor. But doctor, you tell me, is there any treatment to be done at all? That man is a spiritual guru to me. Now, he has had very little formal education. Whatever he derived that strength was from his work that he does and from the suffering that he has gone through all his life. And he achieves that state. So, to that person also, I will say, I wish I had 1/10 of your strength of mind when my time comes. And by saying that, which is truth, I'm also acknowledging and validating the value of his life. With that sentence, I have just told him that you are a great person and I have respect for you. And towards the end of life, for ordinary mortals, feeling that my life has not been in vain is important. Many people may say, or even the family may say, uh, you always talk about these principles. What have you achieved in life? We are still poor. We don't even have a decent home to live in. And if I tell that man, I see that you are a man of principle. I want you to know that I have enormous respect for that. And if possible, I'll say it in presence of his family. And that also, I believe, is validating his value as a human being. And even if he's not a well-read, uh, scholar, I think people have those values, and I believe validating that, acknowledging that, and treating that person with the respect that I owe to every human being is also that part of spiritual support at the very basic level.
Doctor, what you say is so right. And what I feel that the challenge is you have gone way ahead. If I look at you as a representation of the healthcare in India, we have reached such peaks, doctor. Today, there is hardly a physical pain which we cannot deal with. For example, in the earlier years, there was no proper anesthesia. If a person had to do a simple root canal, how much they had to suffer, doctor? Today, there is anesthesia. For any surgery, there is. We have patients with advanced cancer, we send them to a hospice, we send them to Karunashray. People, I believe they give, I'm not sure of the names, but they give drugs like morphine and they give so many drugs which are able to deal with the pain. But doctor, where we need to improve, people have not overcome the pain of the mind. What you said, spiritual, doctor. Fear, worry, stress, anxiety, regret, shame and guilt. Some people are dying. The biggest pain they have is guilt. Sometimes they are crying and they are telling me, I wish I had not done this. No, doctor, that is already past 10 years back. But the guilt and the regret in their life is greater than the pain they are facing. Some people, doctor, they have got, I call them the monster of the ego. They are still having anger, hate, revenge, jealousy, pride, greed, and selfishness. Some people are so angry, doctor, at 70, they are dying of cancer. But bigger than cancer, the pain is the fire in their heart against somebody whom they are carrying a grudge. Have you noticed even this, doctor? The pain of the mind and the ego, this is where we have not advanced, doctor. We have advanced a lot in the medical field. We have advanced a lot in the physical aspect of life. But we have not advanced in the emotional and the spiritual aspects of life. So, I would like to share with you how this is possible, but first your comment on this, what are your views on this?
I totally agree with you. But in addition, I would want to mention two things. One, possibly because the pain relief that you mentioned with medicines like morphine, very inexpensive, you know. We grow poppy legally in our country, we make it, it's inexpensive. Maybe that's part of the problem. Our modern, sophisticated healthcare doesn't seem to be interested in anything inexpensive. And unfortunately, there are too few Karnashrayas, Shanti Avedana Sadhans, or Palliative Indias in this country. Less than 4% of the needy has access to even basic pain relief. We are talking about not only the big cities and the big sophisticated hospitals, we are talking about people living all over the country. And less than 4%, I repeat, of Indians have access to basic pain relief. Now, this is, to me, this is unacceptable. This is unethical. This is immoral. This is the violence. If Mahatma Gandhi said poverty is the worst form of violence, if he were alive today, he would have said, yes, poverty is a very bad form of violence. The worst form of violence is leaving that man who is feeling a nail going into his ear to continue to be in pain and offering no support. So that's about the physical part. But the other part, I totally agree. Guilt, you particularly mentioned guilt. People live through guilt. I wish I hadn't. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish. Now, what can you do for those people? One most important thing that we try to do, because we may not be able to achieve the level of transcendence that you would be able to achieve on the ground when we talk to people and when we listen to people and when we teach it to other healthcare providers. The most important thing that we teach is to listen. 2 ears, one tongue. Very often we are busy talking. Sit down and listen. I would, whenever I can, or my colleagues would, sit down with the person, not stand up and look down and at the rounds in the hospital at the same level, with compassion in your eyes, and say, tell me your story. And they would be taken aback and say, what story? I'm an ordinary human being. Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about how you grew up. Then the stories will come out. And every single person who appeared to be an innocent villager from that town or a gunda from the city, they turn out to be these amazing human beings, each a textbook in life. And at the end, to the person who is really being roasted in the fire of his own guilt, if we say, I see that thought gives you a lot of guilt. I believe if I was in the same environment where you grew up and I had to go through what you had to go through, maybe I would have done the same thing. But I hear what you are saying. And just by the act of hearing and validating, it's quite likely that we'll help the person to some extent. And very often, by building bridges, a little bit of civil engineering of the mind or of the relationships.
Yeah.
I wish I had not quarreled with my brother over those 2 cents of property. 6 years, I had not talked to him. And when we have enough of his confidence for him to share that story, it's a matter of taking a phone with his permission, calling the brother and having a conversation with him. He would also come out with his grievances, but at the end, usually you would see the broken relationship mended, the two brothers hugging themselves and crying together. And that is healing. So whether it's okay, some people are in denial. No, this cannot be happening to me. Some people are angry. These doctors, they said I have ulcer. Now they say I've cancer. The angry person, the person steeped in grief, the person with guilt. And most of these people can be helped. If not salvage the way you would salvage the soul at your spiritual level, but at the very common earthy level, we are able to heal them to a considerable extent. And just by conveying that we are here for you, we will walk with you on your journey,
Yeah.
including that final journey, we are helping them to some extent.
You know, Doctor, what we are all worrying about, and very rightly so, we are worrying about that journey of pain when you are needing palliative care till that moment of death. But Buddha, the enlightened one, you must have heard, he said some word very beautifully. He said this samsara, this world is dukkha, which means that, Doctor, every human being, you or me, ultimately some part of our body will suffer, whether it is the intestine or the colon or the eye or the brain or the heart, because just like a car, after 20 years or 30 years, the car gets old, the body after 80 years or 90 years gets old. But you know, Doctor, the people who are living, unfortunately, I'm sure you can make a transformation. That's why I'm sharing this with you today. People have to look a little bit deeper than the journey up to the physical death. This will help them, Doctor, overcome not only misery on earth, but also the cycle of rebirth. I want to share one small story with you, and I don't know whether this will amuse you, Doctor. A child who was in 10th standard went to his teacher, good friend. He told teacher, my final exam of 10th standard is next month. So teacher said, yes, come on, let's get going. He said, no, I cannot do the exam. I want to commit suicide. So the teacher said, okay, so what are the options? So the teacher told him, this is a chemical. If you drink this, you will die. This is a rope. If you hang this on the rope, you can die. Or you can go to the top of the hill and jump. So the student was little amused, little angry also. The teacher is telling him the ways to commit suicide. So he asked the teacher, instead of advising me about what my bad thoughts are, you are giving me options. The teacher said, I'm giving you the options. But remember one thing. After you commit suicide, you have to come back and start from first standard. You have to come back to first standard, second standard, third standard, fourth standard, and then come to 10th standard. That child was so amazed with this. The child, he told the teacher, sir, let's start studying, sir. I would prefer to attempt the examination now than to come back. So, Doctor, what I'm trying to say, we are afraid of death and the pain and the regret and the guilt. But somehow, Doctor, like what our scriptures have taught us centuries ago, thousands of years ago, we don't realize that we are the immortal soul. We never die. If only we realize this, that how we change our clothes. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you must have heard, this is a very common thing people talk about. This body will die. But if people realize this, Doctor, then in the palliative care that we are giving, we will be able to face the physical pain. The pain will be there, but the suffering will not be there. What you felt, is it Ramana Maharshi doesn't feel the pain? Of course he feels the pain. But what is the point is that he doesn't get the suffering. So this is spirituality. Spirituality is the ability that we are able to realize this, we are not the body. Or for the example, the mind. I always laugh and ask people, when you took a look at a cricket ball, what is the shape and color? They say it's a red, round ball. I say, what is the shape of the mind? And they get confused. They say, mind, they talk of the brain, grey color, fluffy thing. No, we are not talking of the brain. What is the shape of the mind? Then we tell people, the mind you cannot find. The mind is nothing but a bundle of toxic thoughts. And if you are able to control these toxic impulses, then you are able to overcome suffering. And doctor, one thing is to overcome the death that you and me have to face. You and me are also going to face. But are we going to be afraid of death? Or are we going to face that moment of death with courage and with intelligence? That death becomes a moment of liberation. Death becomes a moment, in fact, very few people can accept it. It can be a moment of celebration. Because, I also sing some songs. I'm not sure you know Hindi. But I tell people that when I die, don't cry. When I die, please don't cry, because I will be one with the power in the sky. So how can we help people? You're doing such an amazing job, such a fantastic job in the physical aspect of the pain and the suffering. But if only people realize they are divine souls. Very often people struggle to understand the meaning of soul, S-O-U-L. So I have given them an acronym, Spark of Unique Life, S-O-U-L. The soul will live, and you are that. The bird will fly out of the cage, as they say. This body is a cage. But my challenge is this. Doctor, you are helping people in the palliative care, and I am also helping people in the same stage of life when they are getting palliative care. But I was paying too much attention to the body when I had the charitable homes. Now I try to make people understand karma. For example, some people who are suffering, I ask them, do you even understand why you are suffering? Doctor, suffering is not a necessary evil. It is an effect of cause. It is a reaction of our own action. So do you believe that when people are suffering in this palliative life, they are taking care, how much do you think is karma responsible? What is your view on the law of karma?
So, ARG, I thank you. Thank you for, I have heard your videos. I've heard your expositions on karma, including your conversation with Chetan Bhagat. So, enormous respect for that. So, where this part of it comes into our work, our worldly work, is that very often during that conversation, as they say, they tell us their story, and as we find out what is most important for them, they may want to pursue a line of thought. Like one person who was, like you mentioned, going through a lot of guilt said, he's in a hospital bed, in an intensive care unit, and he said, I want last communion. And my job was to overcome the hospital protocol saying that visitors are allowed only, the immediate family is allowed, to overcome that and make sure that the priest got there for the last communion. That was important to that person. Similarly, there's one person of another religious faith refused morphine because according to his faith, he has to be conscious when he meets the Maker. Anything that may make him sleepy, he did not. And that was okay. And just one addition to what you said, we are not only treating physical pain at a very worldly level by listening to them, by rebuilding relationships, by understanding emotions and helping them with this, where the emotional problem has gone on to the state of a disease, like depressive illness, addressing that and helping people according to their faith to come to people like you to be saved somewhere in their soul. That's also part of their work. I may not be able to achieve that because I am not a learned spiritual scholar like you, because my line of operation is very worldly. But then I realize that I can do only so much. And if that person's faith allows that person to travel that road, my job is also to facilitate that journey, connect him to someone or her to someone like you. And so many people do that. They find peace in the meditation according to a particular order, or in work, or living in ashrams with people like you guiding them, and just facilitating their transfer to that place is also what my colleagues and I do. So all respect to that part of it, and yes, we have to accept our own shortcomings. I can do only so much. It's at a very basic level. There is another level where I need, just like doctors keep referring to specialist doctors, maybe even at a higher level,
Yeah.
referring to people like you for that kind of support.
No, you're very, with all humility, very kind of you to say that, doctor. But you know, doctor, what I'm trying to say, just now what you said, I remember a person was suffering so badly, and when I told them, you should go to the doctor for getting this care, he says, no, this is God's will. God wants me to suffer. It's very sad because we have been, I tell people, don't remain a fool because of what you were taught in your school. Our people have to change, doctor. I'm with all due respect to whichever religion, we are not talking of a religion. But people have to understand that just because 2000 years back some book has told them that they are supposed to suffer, which God would want his child to suffer and not take medication? So these are all, this is what I call, doctor, realization. I tell people, open your real eyes to realize the truth. For example, the Adi Shankara mentioned, he said, Neti, Neti, Tattvamasi. Neti, Neti means you are not this body, you are not this mind. So people, yes, I am one of those spiritual mentors who guides people. But doctor, apart from physical, medical care that we are giving people, if a person understands, I am not the body that will die, I am not the mind which I cannot find, I am not the ego that keeps saying I am the soul. And the Atma, the soul, Atma is Paramatma. That soul, I'm sure you have got some power of the divine inside you. What is that power that's making our heart beat? So let me ask you a very preliminary question, because you're such an intelligent and advanced doctor. If somebody, I'm taking this discussion to another step because of my inspiration by you. How would you define the difference between life and death? What happens in that moment, according to you? What happens in the moment when life becomes death?
Uh, like a person like Paul Kalamity described that time as when breath becomes air.
But what happens, doctor, according to you? When does...
Air. So
Yeah.
at that time, now unfortunately, because worldly people, majority, except for some enlightened people of your stature, have not got there, unfortunately, roughly, well, as close as two-thirds of people get unfortunately delirious. They, and whether it's physical or how much of it's emotional, I wouldn't know. They see things that we cannot see, and some of it may be like near-death experience about people who died in the past. Like I remember that about 3 hours before my father died, he saw his brother who had died some 30 years back. So that kind of thing happens, and sometimes those thoughts and experiences are very miserable and painful. If not, that's okay, but if it's miserable, then we treat it. But for some people, and the more aware they are of death being the consequence of life, the better, they are able to go in peace. So maybe not at your level, but what we see is that people who are brave enough to think about their own mortality. I know that my time will come. I know that I'll have to go. And when I am able to do that, there are two consequences that I find. One, I am able to live my remaining days more meaningfully. For the people who have had the courage to think about it when they are 18, live their life more meaningfully, not wasting their time in investing on a bigger car and a swimming pool behind the house, but finding meaningful, doing meaningful things meaningful. That's one. The other thing is we can be much more calmly accepting the inevitable. And I personally, I personally would very much hope that the time of my passing will be a time of celebration. I hope my family and my friends, including Mr. Mahesh, who is sitting here, my friend who is looking at the technical things, I hope they all will realize that my time has come. And based on my faith, I hope if they feel they can pray for me, I hope they will. And I hope they will they will celebrate my life and my death rather than suffer from it. But that's a state of mind that requires for us primarily accepting our own mortality.
I am going to give you 2 minutes of my realization before I take your conclusion. You know, doctor, what did I realize? I realized that the birth date on our certificate, what we call the birth date on our Aadhaar card and passport, that is fake. Because you know, as a doctor, 2 days before we arrived, we were kicking our mother in the womb. We were very much alive, we were kicking. So as a doctor, we all know that we were conceived 9 months before. 9 months before when we were conceived, doctor, after that we cannot change our mother. When you were conceived in your mother's stomach, at that time you were only zygote, one single cell. Then the embryo and the fetus and the embryo was created. If only we contemplate that we were born 9 months before, and the body came later. Body came, and then from the small chota baby, the small baby that comes at birth, we eat pasta and appam and idiyappam, and we grow big. Then one day, ultimately, doctor, like you said, on a gracious moment, we will leave this body. And people will say, we passed away. That is why I say, people, if we are leaving this body and we are passing away, there should be celebration. Because in the moment of death, the Katha Upanishad tells us there are two possibilities. If there is a realization that I am not this body that I left, I am the soul, I will become one with the Supreme Soul. And if there is no realization, the moment I am gone, I will be reborn. In a matter of seconds, I will be in a new body, carrying my karma. So doctor, if only we realize this simple thing. I am leaving you with 2 minutes of I call this a crash course in enlightenment. In the crash course in enlightenment is only talking about contemplation on 2 moments of life. The moment of conception and the departure, the moment of death, where the body dies. If we are able to contemplate on these two, doctor, then we will be able to face pain like a train. I always tell people, pain is like a train. It will come like a bullet train, but then it will go. After it finishes its job, the pain like a train will disappear. But as long as we think we are this body, the mind, the ego, then all the miseries come. So I'm leaving that point with you, because you and me can have another 2 hours of conversation. It can go, but you are a busy doctor. So what are your thoughts on this, on closing with, in terms of whether rebirth or karma or enlightenment? Some thoughts, whatever thoughts you have, and then we will close up this discussion for today.
Thank you. So, like I said in the beginning, I am someone who is operating at a much lower level than you. I hope your mission succeeds. I hope you will be able to bring the majority of the 1.4 billion people in our country to that level of that enlightenment. And that's a huge task. I hope so many spiritual gurus and you will be able to achieve that. Elevate people like me to another level of spiritual being where the suffering will not be experienced. The disease may be there, the body may be in suffering, but the person doesn't suffer, and where death becomes a peaceful passage from here to a place that I don't know about, but you may see more with greater clarity in your mind, which may be in another birth or whatever that realm is that I do not know about. But I hope your mission succeeds, ARD. I wish you the best, because people like me are in suffering. We take on physical, social, emotional, financial, and spiritual suffering. And very often, what I am able to do as a doctor and what my colleagues are able to do as healthcare providers is only a small part of what is necessary. So I wish your mission all success, and I hope that people like me will benefit from your teaching.
Thank you, Doctor. You are doing such an amazing thing. My closing words to you are only this, Doctor, that when we wake up, I also was ignorant for 48 years. I was living a complete ignorant life, running a business. But when we wake up to the spiritual reality, I don't see Dr. Rajagopal in front of me. I see God in front of me. I see a Deva, I see a Devata in front of me. And if only we realize that every human being is a manifestation of God, then we don't have to search for God, Doctor. We have to see God in every being. Then we will serve everybody as God. We will see everybody as God, and we will love everybody as God. So I want to thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity of talking to you. I am grateful to learn from you on the beautiful work you do, and hopefully we will meet one day and have a conversation. But I want to express my gratitude for this conversation, Doctor.
And this is something that I can understand. Tat Tvamasi. You and it are the same. I can easily see God in everything and every person around me. That's a bit that I can understand. So I am glad I had this opportunity to meet someone like you. Thank you for the opportunity to learn from you, and I look forward to, as you say, someday meeting you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for patiently listening to the video. And if you have questions, if you want to contact me, just WhatsApp me on 98451 55555. WhatsApp India 919845155555. But if you want to get answers to your questions, then come on Zoom, and the Zoom ID is on your screen. Every day at 8, you will find answers to all the difficult questions of life. See you there.